Why we are here today? Just because this happens to be a month where we are supposed to talk about prostate cancer? Possibly yes. But there are other stronger reasons. Something has been happening to prostate cancer field in last few years, that the mortality due to prostate cancer is going up, not going down. And it used to be in last 20 years, there was a lot of screening being done, a lot of testing being done, and the mortality was going up. But for last 5-6 years, there has something happened that prostate cancer mortality is going up. First time when we are seeing a patient with prostate cancer, they have more aggressive cancer. First time when we are seeing a patient with prostate cancer, they may have what we call metastasis, that's the cancer has gone to the lymph node or has gone to the bones. And the least what is happening is that an organ which is supposed to contain this cancer within is not able to contain the cancer within, and these cancer cells are creeping a little bit outside the capsule, right where the nerves for the erections and the nerves for urinary control are there. So basically we are finding this cancer a little bit too late, and it's our responsibility to kind of bring up that discussion right at the forefront and think about what we can do to change that. In this room, there are patients, there are men with different journeys. Some of them have already dealt with this cancer, they may be 10, 20 years away. Some of them may be dealing with some annoying PSA issues or recurrence issues. Some of them may have tried the first round of treatments for the metastatic disease or an aggressive cancer, and they are wanting to know what is the new one for them. Some of them haven't had a treatment, and they need to decide what's the best way to go for them. And there are more than one options, and that's a very important question in their mind. Some people have been diagnosed and have been recommended by one of us that they have cancer, but they don't really need a treatment because their cancer is not very aggressive. Sometimes it's not easy to digest, sometimes it's not easy to understand. Cancer, and don't do anything, what will happen? Some of you may have had a biopsy done some time ago, and biopsy didn't show anything, but the PSA is still rising and you are worried about what's happening. I've already had 3 biopsies, what's going on? So that's another group of people. And there are some who have a family history of prostate cancer, they have elevated PSA, they happen to be having a brother is another person in the same family having prostate cancer, and they genuinely want to know if they have cancer. That's different groups of people, some at risk and some with the diagnosis of prostate cancer. At this time, people who have a diagnosis of prostate cancer in the United States, if they want to live in one city, everyone decides to live in one city and maybe spouses will not be allowed. They can fill in the entire city of Chicago. There are over 3 to 5 million people who have or had prostate cancer. So it's a very common cancer. In order for us to have a discussion about prostate cancer, it's important to have a discussion which is aligned to a particular group, what they need. So my desire today is to introduce the topic, get a conversation going, and possibly every month or 6 weeks, we can have sessions aligned to an active surveillance, at-risk, metastatic decision process. That kind of, and we will go into the deeper dive of each one of them. I have some slides which will highlight the numbers which we are talking about, that prostate cancer happens to be one of the commonest male cancer. It tends to We diagnose in over 300,000 men, but we still manage to lose maybe about 35,000 men every year due to prostate cancer. Prostate cancer is an immense disease, but right in the outset, I want to highlight one fact. I have seen personally in my last 20-25 years dealing with maybe over 30,000 men with prostate cancer, that many men owe their prostate cancer journey success not to the men, but to the women in their lives. That's a real fact. I have seen many daughters, wives, nieces calling for get it checked, get it checked, get it checked. And men, we have a little bit of an invincible approach that we are fine. We don't want to talk about it. And that's what I'm bringing at the forefront of this discussion, that we need to talk about prostate, we need to talk about PSA, we need to understand what is 4K, what is an XO, what is Select, what is an OncoDX, what are the other testings there. So I will be talking about these different tests first. Then I will open it up for all of you to ask questions, and I will bring the panelists in and I'll introduce the panelists who are there. But I want you to just know a little bit about me, about how did I get involved with the prostate cancer journey, a little bit, few boring slides, and then I'll get on to the substance of it. So this morning at 5 a.m. I was thinking about what is prostate. I think, so let's look at it. This is the bladder, this is the prostate, this is the rectum. Prostate happens to be just in front of the rectum, has different zones, has a muscle, there is a backbone, there is a blood vessel where there are some neurons, and these green structures are the nerves which are going through and through. And I'm drawing this morning. For you, I simplified it. It's a very compact organ which is hiding inside the male pelvis in the lower part, has an outer shell which is known as a capsule, an inner pulp which is the prostatic gland. In that gland, there are many different kinds of cells. Just outside the prostate, the prostatic capsule, are certain nerves which are literally hugging and touching the prostatic surface, and they are in transit to the penile tissue. They are in transit to supply to the urethral muscles which control the continence. They are in transit to also supply the pelvic structures including bladder, seminal vesicles. All that is packed in a very narrow space. So this is one operation which is not easy. This is not an organ easily tackled because it happens to be deeply embedded within very important structures. If it is found, when it is 100% within the prostate, it's an easy battle to fight. But if it is trying to creep on the surface, it's not easy to fight because the battle becomes microscopic, not millimeter, not centimeter discussion. And that's where a lot of challenges come, and I'll be happy to discuss about it either today or over the time. But this is that complex anatomy. This is the prostate gland which we talk about it. I also want you to understand prostate cancer is a very mixed disease. Many people get the diagnosis of prostate cancer, but not every cancer is alike. And it connects with me with a journey which I had growing up in a northern part of the India. Has anyone heard about this book which was actually in the Reader's Digest and also National Geographic? It was published. I grew up in the north of India, and I used to hang around with my grandfather, and my grandfather used to tell me the stories. And one of the story was that just like we see in US bears here and there, and in upstate I have problems with the bears, the deers come some places. Tigers were present in Indian habitat. But they coexisted, they didn't cause too much of a trouble. And then suddenly a story evolved that certain tigers became a little bit crazy. If there were thousands of tigers, 5 or 6 of them became crazy and they started killing humans. And that became a major problem in India at that time. And my grandfather, who used to be in a job which involved him going from one village to the other village, either on a bike or walking. So he had experienced that. He told me about that story. And this is that police station where all that was happening. So that led to a whole story, a movie about man-eaters of Kumayu, or how that story evolved. So these tigers were wounded tigers who couldn't go for the normal prey, and they started going for the humans, which were an easy prey for them. But people didn't know how to deal with them, so they started randomly killing tigers. This is the time when one hunter killed maybe 7 or 8 tigers, and they got a picture. But none of those tigers was actually the man-eater. Man-eaters were too smart. They were hiding somewhere else, and the innocent tigers were being killed. Then they got an Irish hunter brought into that part of the India, and they assigned him to deal with it, and that he was a good tracker. He knew what he was doing. He finally got to the tigers, but in that bargain, he saved the other ones. And that's the reason there was a book published. His name was Jim Corbett, and he was known as a gentleman hunter. And he used his book proceedings and everything and created a sanctuary for the tigers, and it's very common. If you go to India, you must visit Jim Corbett Park, because that's where the tigers live, and they are coexisting without any problem. That story was in my mind, and when I came here in 1993, and then early on, there was a lot of hue and cry about the PSA, that the PSA is over-detecting, PSA is causing too many biopsies. There were similarities between prostate cancer and the tiger story, which I knew. And I was a surgeon, so I had to kind of connect with it. Am I going to be a Jim Corbett kind of a surgeon? Or am I going to be just the other people who are taking pictures without knowing who is an aggressive tiger? So that is the journey I took, and I think there are 3 different kinds of prostate cancers. These are the Gleason 6s, and sometimes Gleason 7, 3 plus 4 with a small volume. They are there, they are scary, but they are not really going to do anything bad if we manage it right. I have couple of thousands of patients of this kind, and I at least remember 4 or 5 or 6 of them. Then I thought it was Gleason 6, and sometimes they grow. They do grow, but if we keep an eye on it, every couple of years we do an MRIs and biopsies, we can pick them up. Then there is in Gleason 7, most of the time what we call an intermediate risk prostate cancer. This is the one, but if you focus deep into it, you will see there is not even teeth in there. So they are scary, but they can be tackled, and this is the kind where we can really do a great nerve sparing, we can really do a great radiation, we can really do sometimes focal therapy. All the options become an option for this group of cancer, which is intermediate risk and has yet not gone anywhere. And then, of course, there are lethal Gleason 8s and 9s and 10s. Sometimes we treat them just with one treatment, sometimes they need other treatment. We still manage to beat most of them, but many times there are recurrences, and many times the nerve sparing cannot be as good as it can be. And this is one of the pictures from that cancer, the Gleason 10, which I lost the battle. I mean, we took it out, we gave everything, but sometimes this cancer is smarter than us. So I got into the depth of what is this cancer, and I want you to understand, this is the bladder, this is the prostate, and inside the prostate, one bad cell started becoming 2 or 3 or 4, but it's still within the gland, and we call it Gleason 6. When it breaks between this glandular architecture, it becomes a stromal cancer, we call it Gleason 7. Then it finds a blood vessel, it finds a nerve, and it tries to escape outside the capsule. That's where the problematic cancer comes. What we call that this is now extra prostatic. meaning it's trying to creep out of this, and it's now becoming a problematic cancer, and then from there it can go to the bones, it can go to the lymph nodes. And we diagnose a lot of cancers. But do you see a wolf? One of them, the rest of them, they are sheeps. And if we go with a gun to all of the sheep, poor sheep, wolf will be the first one who will hide out and run away. But this wolf exists, but me as an expert has a responsibility to unhide for you whether you have a sheep or you have a wolf. Because it takes a little bit of an understanding, because there are a lot of these sheep around there. 300,000 men get diagnosed with prostate cancer, and that's the reason all this drama about the PSA should be done and not done. I will not go too further from here, and I will bring up the panel very soon. But my theme is PSA saves life. But not every elevated PSA needs a biopsy. Not every diagnosed cancer needs a treatment. And if it needs a treatment, I would rather find this cancer early when there are many options there. Sometimes I want to have a realistic expectation as to when can I save the nerve and when I cannot save the nerve. I really want to have a discussion about how the staging, how the PSMA PET scan, how the MRI, how the new ultrasounds, all those things are helping me in making a decision choice. Which patient is not a candidate for surgery at all, which patient needs a chemotherapy or a hormone therapy. We are developing immunotherapies and clinical trials and all that matter. So at this point, I want you to imagine there are different kinds of prostate cancers, even though they carry prostate cancer the word. But not finding a cancer in time makes me really disappointed and sad. Reason I'm saying it, we have launched a new initiative, and you may have seen a mobile unit which is outside, in which we send a van to every place where we can, the churches, the schools, and community centers. And I was hoping to reach out to about 1,000 men in 1 year. We just crossed 4,000 men. And out of those 4,000 men, 700 of them have an abnormal PSA. And many of them have a PSA which is above 20, above 30, above 400. I didn't want to see that. I would like to see a PSA of 5, 4, 3, 7, that kind of a number. So that means the same PSA of 500 3 years ago was a PSA of 6. I could have cured that. But if we don't find it early, we are not able to give the options which exist. So going and finding out is important. The biopsies have become much more safer, the infection rates have gone down, transperineal biopsies have come up, and that's what I want you to have a session today. So moving forward, we will have sections for people at risk, people who have had a negative biopsy, people who are deciding between active surveillance and treatment, people who are deciding between different forms of treatment, people who have had a treatment of one kind and have an early recurrence, and people who have a metastatic.